Well, things have been happening so fast that it's hard to keep up with what's going on in our world. Interesting times, nevertheless. We want to go, first of all, today to some statements that have been made over the weekend. This particular article is entitled, Fatah Official. 1949 lines would be Israel's doom. Now, here's what actually happened. A senior member of the Fatah Central Committee, led by Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, in an interview referred to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Barack Obama as dirtbags, and explained how causing Israel to leave Judea and Samaria would spell its doom. Abbas Zaki told the interviewer that any final status agreement between Israel and the PA should be based upon the borders of June 4, 1967. Then he said, everybody knows that the greater goal cannot be accomplished in one leap, one go. Israel claims that Abbas and numerous other PA Arab officials have made it clear in many ways that the greater and ultimate goal has been and continues to be the elimination of the state of Israel altogether. But this was an outright statement to that effect. Zaki made his remarks during an interview on the Qatar-based Al Jazeera satellite television channel, which reaches millions of Arabs worldwide. Now, remember, this was done in Arabic. However, it was translated by MEMRI, Middle East Media Research Institute. And when they translated this from Arabic to English, where we can understand it, then it was revealed what he really said. If Israel withdraws from Jerusalem, evacuates its 650,000 settlers, and dismantles the wall, what will become of Israel? It will come to an end, Zaki predicted. Okay, now, most people in Israel, many people in Israel, contend that this is in fact the case. If you were Israeli, or if you were Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, what would you be doing? What kind of an approach would you take? With worldwide pressure coming down on you to withdraw, to negotiate a peace deal that you know will give you indefensible borders, what do you do? Do you stand fast and insist on indefensible borders? Do you procrastinate, stall, hoping something will happen to change the whole scenario? For example, maybe the Arabs would do something crazy like start another war, which would give you a pretext to go ahead and just drive them out of the promised land so that Israel could assume her God-given borders. Or would you decide that the time has come to trust in the international community, in the United States of America? Now, this is what the U.S. is saying. Mr. Panetta has been in Israel the last day or so, and he is saying, look, you've got American security guarantees. Therefore, you are able to take the risk necessary for peace. Now, anytime you make a peace agreement, there should not be a risk involved. However, in this particular case, Mr. Panetta, who's our new Secretary of Defense, is saying, look, we've got your back. The United States is giving you security guarantees. Therefore, you're able to take the risk. Now, when we say risk, we're talking about a nation 9 miles wide at the waist. We're talking about bringing the same people that are firing rockets into southern Israel within, 100 yards of the city of Jerusalem, of the Temple Mount. We're talking about tremendous endangerment, bringing those people into firing range, very close firing range of the population centers of Israel, bringing those people close enough to shoot planes out of the sky as they are attempting to land at Ben Gurion Airport. So This shows you some of the complexity of the situation that is not often discussed. It's easy to speak in generalities and say, oh, yeah, so they should do this, they should do this. However, once you decide that you're going to withdraw to 1967 borders, then you're deciding we will be a nation 9 miles wide at the waist. Now, when you analyze this, what does that mean, 9 miles wide? Imagine if you are an army and you are a prime minister attempting to defend a nation 9 miles wide. How long would it take an airplane to transverse your territory? Let's say at 3 o'clock in the morning, here comes a surprise attack. How long does it take that plane to fly from one side of Israel to the other? Would you like to think 3 minutes? 3 minutes. You don't even have time to hit the snooze alarm in 3 minutes. Now, from one side of the U.S. to the other, a supersonic plane flying at fighter speeds, from one side of the U.S. to the other, 6 hours. Israel, if they withdraw to 67 borders, it would be 3 minutes. Now, Mr. Zaki, while speaking in Arabic to a friendly crowd, let his guard down, and he admitted that if Israel withdraws to 1967 borders, it will eventually spell the end of the nation of Israel. Already Israel is isolated with present borders. Already Israel is fighting for her survival because the walls are closing in from every side. Hezbollah is on the north. Hamas is on the south. We have Jordan on the east, which is supposed to be Israel's best friend, but not a very good friend. And then we have, from every direction, you have Syria on the northeast. So every way you look, you're surrounded. So what do? Do you put yourself in a position where you have to depend on the world community that's not been very favorable to you, and the United States that recently has not been the best friend in the world? They've turned friendly since election heated up, but before that, it was a real headlock that they were putting Israel into. You can't even build a doghouse in East Jerusalem anymore. So the pressure is on. I mean, you're dealing with an ally who's promised repeatedly, we will move the Israeli embassy, the U.S. embassy in Israel, to Jerusalem. They've promised it there's a law that we have to do it. But there's this one little escape clause that our lawmakers foolishly put in there, which says, but if for national security reasons the president doesn't feel we can do this, he may come and get a waiver before Congress, and this must be redone every 6 months. So since 1995, every 6 months, here comes the president, sending a little note up, oh, by the way, it would endanger national security for us to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Therefore, we are not going to do it. So we send the message that we do not defend Israel's right to have an embassy in Jerusalem. George W. Bush made the bold statement while he was campaigning, the day of my inauguration, we will move the embassy to Jerusalem. Well, what happened to that? Nothing. One inauguration passed in 4 years, another inauguration passed, another 4 years, nothing. He wimped out. Because I'm sure he had advisors telling him, you can't do this. Or perhaps he was only doing it for votes in the first place. I don't know. But anyway, bottom line is both George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama have all done the same thing. Republicans, Democrats, they are all under the same intimidation and control, or whatever else you may want to say to explain all that. Anyway, so now then, here we have this man. Now, who is this man? Let's make sure we understand clearly. He is a senior member of the Fatah Central Committee. Fatah is Mahmoud Abbas's party. Mahmoud Abbas is the president of the Palestinians. He's the one that's ruling the West Bank. He was the president of all the Palestinians. However, Hamas forced his hand, overthrew him, drove him out of Hamas. So now he headquarters in Ramallah, and in the meantime, Hamas and Mr. Haniyeh rules the Gaza sector from Gaza City. So you have the two factions here. There's a split that has taken place in the Palestinian world. Nevertheless, Mr. Abbas is over the Fatah organization. Mr. Haniyeh is over Hamas. And this man, Mr. Zaki, is a senior member of the Fatah Central Committee, and he says when he didn't think we were listening that we can't do everything in one leap. We've got to take it one step at a time. Now, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu claims that's the reason that Abbas will not say we will recognize a Jewish state. As a matter of fact, Abbas claims that's a racist statement because he's saying that Muslims, Arabs should be able to live in Israel, and they should be able to grow and to expand until finally someday they'll be able, he doesn't say this openly, but they'll be able to outnumber the Israelis and vote in an Arab as the prime minister of Israel. That's ultimately where he thinks it's going. However, Israel is determined not to allow themselves to be maneuvered into this particular position. So there's a real battle on. What is the battle? It's to avoid another Hitler's Holocaust. That's what the battle is. That's the battle. Hitler tried to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. Now then, the Arabs are trying to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. Now, rip the cover off of it and call it what it is, because the Bible teaches that ultimately the United Nations is going to come down against Israel for the Battle of Armageddon. Actually, what we witnessed on September the 23rd, when Mr. Abbas went before the UN General Assembly, made his speech, and handed his request for membership in the UN to Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the General Secretary of the United Nations, when that happened, and then when the subsequent speeches were held of Benjamin Netanyahu, and then many others made their speeches as well, what we actually witnessed was the world community setting the table for the Battle of Armageddon. I'll explain more in the next segment of the program why I would make such a dramatic assertion that the UN, in its present General Assembly session, actually have been setting the table for the Battle of Armageddon.